Welcome back to Energy First with Sarah and Jen. I'm Jennifer McIntyre.
Sarah Phillips.
And just want to run through the kind of purpose of the podcast like we always do. So we center on education in the oil and gas sector. So technologies, processes. We center on education as far as education that can lead to careers within the energy sector. And next, we do discuss legislation. So legislation that's either currently in effect that is having an impact on our industry or has been proposed that could be impacting our industry. And then finally, the people of the industry. So the people that make this industry the everything that it actually is. And that's the most important part of the podcast for sure. So real quickly, we want to run through our sponsors like we always do. We have Deep Well Services. Thank you to Mark and John for all of your support. We have Makuso Services. Those guys have been absolutely wonderful. And then Women's Energy Network are also sponsors of the podcast. We are always looking for sponsors, of course. This doesn't get produced for free, and we definitely need to continue getting this message out.
We're an oil field family, and we're here because we love you guys. So if you want to, we're asking our family for a little bit of help with some sponsorships. We would really appreciate it. I think a lot of you have come to me and Jen out and at all of these events and said how much it means to you what we're doing. We're doing this for you. So if you just want to help us out a little bit, we'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to continue getting the message out for sure. It's incredibly important. We've been very lax as an industry, speaking the good word and getting the kind of positive message out. It's definitely long overdue, particularly up here in Appalachia, I would say. They're a little bit better in some of the other places, which we're not going to make any announcements soon, but we have been in talks with another kind of major company that is very well known, that has been doing this for quite some time. And I think we're going to be doing some collaboration. So that's going to be super exciting. So without further ado, I'm pretty pumped about this episode because, very recently I ran for local office, and I'm not going to go into that whole process, but it definitely kind of opened my eyes about a lot of different things. And I actually think it made me much more middle of the line than I was prior to that experience. But one of the things that I did experience through that process was I got to get to know our local Farm Bureau. And, I obviously knew what the Farm Bureau was, but I really had no idea what they did, what purpose they served. They're not really good about, marketing themselves. So that is something that I'm actually on the side proactively doing, is kind of helping them get their message out as well. But a lot of people don't realize that they are physically, an organization that is supposed to be the voice of agriculture for our states. They run by county. I'm actually a member of Fayette County. And the other thing that they do is they propose legislation every year. So they are active in Harrisburg. I believe it's every November they put a brochure together of legislation that would help the agricultural sector within that state. And there's an entire section in that book about oil and gas. People don't realize that, like an entire chapter. And so this is legislation that both benefits agriculture within the state and obviously affects oil and gas as well. And I just couldn't work out why they weren't speaking to each other. Here are two groups of people from the two largest industries in the world, and they weren't talking to each other, working on similar things and not...
A lot of synergies.
Absolutely, not pulling, things together. So I believe that there are talks about starting an energy committee for Pennsylvania, and I'm going to sit on that committee with the Farm Bureau to try and pull those two groups together. And so that kind of led me to thinking about people that I've gotten to know in the industry that kind of had that mixed background, environmental, agricultural, and then obviously working in oil and gas as well. And Corey was the first person that came to mind. So without further ado, I want to introduce Corey. This is Corey Reiter. what is your actual title at Gulfport? What do you do?
So my actual title at Gulfport Energy is the infrastructure field manager for Ohio. I've been with them since 2014. I came on as the construction foreman. We did that for a while. Through other opportunities, moved up to superintendent. Then I had another opportunity to move into the field manager's position, which I definitely jumped at that, and been there ever since. And it's been a heck of a ride.
Do you think your agricultural background kind of led you into that as the kind of part of oil and gas that you went into?
It kind of did. And the long and short answer is I went to college for livestock production.
Okay.
Was working on a beef and grain operation local to our area. Things didn't work out. I left that job, and I got a job as a heavy equipment operator.
Okay.
And it just one thing kind of led to the next.
But I'm sure you were operating equipment of some way, shape, or form from when you were little, right?
Yeah,
That's the nature of it.
I think my dad taught me to run the skid steer when I was like 5 years old.
Yeah. That's kind of the nature of working in agriculture.
I got my CDL as soon as I turned 18. Been around heavy equipment my whole life. We still have stuff on the farm that we run and get to run with my little boy. So
Aw, how old is he?
He's 18 months.
Oh, I forgot. He's
Can
little
you run the
still.
skid steer?
No. He would if he could. He sits on his mom's lap and she drives it for me while we feed hay and I open the gates and stuff. So
That's the next generation. I love that.
that's great. There's no better way to be raised than out on the farm.
What
Oh,
time do you wake up?
He usually is up, but we're up, between 5 and 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
yeah. It's an early day. It's like oil and gas.
Yeah,
It's
but
the same thing.
It's a little different. We're not dairy farmers, so we don't have to be milking the cows 3 times a day. The beef cows they're there, and when you're there, and they're happy as long as they got food and water. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's natural for you to be kind of a steward of the property as well. So that in my mind, I mean, I've certainly been in and around construction for a very long period of time. And just like the rest of oil and gas, I've seen it change over the years, just the attitudes, the methods, the reclamation processes that we go through, the links that we go through has definitely changed over the years. So again, I think those synergies have grown even closer between agriculture and our current kind of construction practices.
yeah, and I think my role at Gulfport, they lean on me pretty heavily when we're dealing with landowners and agricultural stuff. I got a really good relationship with our land guys. And when there's questions about that type of stuff, they definitely ask me, and we'll go out and do field meetings with landowners if need be. And, I'll put my recommendations in as what I think the best practice is for both parties.
Yeah.
Do you bond over cows?
Sometimes.
Really?
He gets geeky about cows.
I love my cows.
So talking about that, then, tell us the other side of your story.
Yeah, so aside from working full-time at Gulfport, with my family, my mom and dad, my brother, my wife, we own Reiter farms. We run around 35 head of mama cows right now. It's a relatively small operation. We all worked outside of that.
Sure.
Just did this as a side thing. So we do that, and then we keep all of our feeder calves back. We raise them all for freezer beef. Raise all my own replacement heifers. So it's kind of a one-stop shop for us. I've put a lot of time and effort into our program, and it's really starting to show. And then, with COVID, I would say that the one blessing that happened out of COVID was I sold everything I had available, like right now.
Yeah.
We started a list, and it led us into the next business venture that we are starting. It's called Marlboro Country Meats. What we're going to do is everybody's going to be able to come to the farm. We're putting a little storefront there right at the farm, and they'll be able to come and buy our not fresh, but frozen cuts of meat right there off of us at the farm. So if they want to come
That's so cool.
and buy it.
So we could come.
Yeah,
Yeah.
come on up.
Yeah.
I heard they're different colors. This is a completely new world.
What, the
to me.
meat
No.
itself? Yeah, it's absolutely a different color.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, people are probably going to hate me for this, but I think a lot of good things actually came from COVID as far as opening our eyes in general.
For sure.
I think it definitely refocused a lot of people back to buying local, for definite, and I think when we were talking before this podcast, I was teaching people to butcher chickens because nobody knows how to do these things anymore. And people started raising bees at their houses and doing hobby farming and growing their own vegetables. And I think we needed that refocus. So I'm a firm believer that God does everything for a reason. And I think that that was definitely one of the purposes of this.
Yeah, I mean, meat cutting is definitely a lost art.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of kids my generation that want to do that kind of work. It's hard
And
work.
it is an art.
It is. You can really mess up something if you don't.
I've had
if you don't-
a cut of beef that's been cut bad, and it completely ruins it.
It does.
It doesn't matter what you've done in the field; it's
You
bad.
just might as well make it in a hamburger.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
But
How do you miscut a piece of meat?
I mean, there's grains in the meat. So if you're cutting it with the grain or against the grain, I mean, there's all. I'm not
changes
It'll
it.
ruin the taste.
Not the taste; it makes it tough.
the tough. Yeah.
Oh.
I'm not a meat cutter, so I won't go into complete detail.
But it makes a
misspeak,
huge
but
difference.
yes.
Yeah,
I actually think Penn State actually started a meat cutting program.
that's amazing.
Don't quote me on that, but I think I did.
I'll have to ask because PA Farm Bureau is very involved with Penn State. Obviously, we send a lot of kids and things like that there for various programs. So I'll find out. But yeah, so I think you're the ideal kind of candidate to give both sides of this story. Obviously, part of your heart is in oil and gas because that's provided for your family. But then you have the agricultural side as well. And I think a lot of people kind of miss how integral both of those industries are. And on that call prior to coming here, you mentioned that you said, and Sarah was like, wow, there are 3 things in your mind that needed to sustain life in our country and our world. What did you say that they were?
You got to have good, clean energy.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have a good food source that's healthy for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to have good health care that's affordable.
Yeah. And the second 2 lead directly back to energy.
Yep.
Yeah. We talk about healthcare all of the time and the lack thereof in foreign countries. We are very blessed here. I do kind of lose sleep at night sometimes thinking about various blackouts that we've had in states, people not realizing without proper backup power, the implications that could have health-wise.
We actually had a power outage this past spring at our property that we've never really had this issue before, but we had a high windstorm event come through and knocked the power out, and it was so bad in our area that they didn't get our power back on for a week where we live.
So it was the same. We get the same out at mine. We're rural here, and we're about 6 days. We didn't have a backup generator. I actually used a light plant. I thought that was pretty clever. Several light plants. I'm like, hey, can I borrow those light plants? I'm going to run my house off of them. But I had eggs incubating at the time, and it was freezing. So I was going to lose them. And at the time, they were rare breed poultry. So we're not talking like 50-cent eggs.
Right.
They were expensive eggs. And I'm like panicking about my rare breed birds dying in the basement. But, it was a reality.
Fortunate for us, we have lots of generators. We were able to get things back on.
You can call me for a light plant if you need something extra.
When you're feeding 30-some head of cows, they drink a lot of water.
Yeah.
If you don't have a
Freezes.
or a well,
Mm-hmm.
you can only haul so much water.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all of these farms. So one thing that JMAC kind of taught me was that 20% of our fossil fuels are used by farms.
By
Used
agriculture,
to
food production.
Yeah, food
Food
production.
production.
Yes.
Yeah, so like if any of these farms lose power for a week, that's
Yeah.
lives.
A lot of them rely on the bigger, farms, dairies and stuff like that rely on natural gas powered generators as backup, so.
But it's still fossil fuels.
Exactly.
They still need
If you don't
them.
have it,
Correct.
you don't have power.
Yeah. So part of the stuff that I was researching, I came across the fact that 2.1 quadrillion BTU of energy a year is used in farms and farm production. That's insane to me. I mean, that's a huge amount. And then I got curious what the composition of that consumption was. So, roughly 40% of that's diesel, 24 is electric, 13 is nat gas, which you're electric, you could say a lot of that's nat gas too. 11% gasoline, 7% LPG, and with a total of 20% of all fossil fuel consumption is used in food production. So that's just kind of crazy to me. And so that kind of leads into my next question for you, and that is, with the increase in prices of fossil fuels, and especially small farms like yourselves, I mean, have you found that affecting you guys?
Yeah, I mean, fuel prices definitely hurt smaller operators. They're on a budget. Like I said, we do the farm and stuff, separate from our full-time jobs. So luckily we have supplemental money coming.
Sure.
Basically, we work all day our daytime job to fund our farm is how we look at it right now. It's kind of funny, but we do. But yeah, I mean, anytime a price of something goes up, I mean, just look at vehicles and stuff. Farmers need trucks, they need tractors. And what do those tractors use and those trucks use? They use diesel fuel.
Mm-hmm.
They use oil.
So you don't think we're going to have like Tesla versions of John Deere's anytime soon?
I was thinking the same thing.
So they have worked on that stuff, electric tractors and stuff. The big question was, if I'm 30 miles from home and this thing needs its battery charged, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
They don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're not using it then until you figure it out.
And then it's the cost, too, involved with this, right?
The cost of all this stuff is just out of control.
It is. And these are farmers who are already really at the baseline of margin of still being able to survive, if they're surviving at all, right? So adding any extra cost.
Farmers, buy everything at the highest price, sell it all at the lowest price.
Yeah.
And then the retailers reap the rewards.
Yeah. And you had mentioned, we were actually discussing that, kind of some of the implications that these big box stores and large producers are having on ag. I mean, what have you seen? Yeah,
I mean, you got I won't say any names, but you got your large feeder companies that supply your big box stores with their product.
Walmart? Is that a big
You can't
box?
say that.
Oh.
Well, we can.
Whoops. Sorry. A big grocery store? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Big food chain.
Yeah.
They kind of control the markets on the prices of stuff. When COVID came in, look what happened to the price of the stores. It went through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Does it come back down much?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Yeah. They achieved what they wanted, right? They got those price increases.
That's what they wanted the whole time. But it helped all the local guys too, because now these guys are needing supply for their feedlots, right? So they're going to go to Joe Blow to buy a couple hundred head of feeder cows, and they're going to say, hey, this is what we're going to give you. Say it's $1.10 a pound.
Mm-hmm.
Well, local market, he can take them to the local market and get $2 a pound. Well, why would I sell it to him for that? Just because he's always bought them, and that was what the price was before? No. Now the farmers are starting to get a little more control and be able to.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that.
Command the price that they need for their animals, and it's a real good reset. I think. I think people are it really opened their eyes up when they went to the store and Walmart.
I was very popular because I have like 6 freezers. I have a game freezer, a beef freezer, a pork freezer.
Yep.
People are like, hey, Jen.
Yep. They went to the stores and there's nothing left. And the stuff that was there was just way out of price. And, and you don't know what you're eating anyways, At least you can go like me. The best part about the way I'm setting my stuff up, I can take them from the store, come out the door, and go into our next door, and show them exactly how we run our whole operation.
Yeah, that's just super cool. I think people really enjoy being able to well, some will, and then there's certain people until they get grips with it that'll be like, oh my gosh, it's still got fur and it's walking. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, that's where it comes from. It doesn't magically appear. But
I mean, we take pretty good pride in the way we raise our cattle. Ours are pretty spoiled. They got fans on them in the summertime, and they got big pens to be in. It's always clean. They get the best.
It's like talk like affectionately about your
you do
heifers.
become
ask my wife how I feel about my cows during
do they have names
season. Some of them yeah during calving season, man, if I lose an animal for any reason, I take it pretty dang hard, because I worked all year to get that calf, and the mama did his job or whatever. The calf gets sick, who knows. Can't save them all. It's just the way it is. But I try like heck. When you lose them, it's tough on certain people, and I'm one of them.
Yeah, I was the same with my birds, and so know what you're putting into your family's body at that point, unlike when you're buying it at the store, and so I never was sad when they had to go. They're there to serve a purpose, and they were given a good life. And I have my own personal religious beliefs, and it falls into that too. So I don't know. I think it's full circle. I think, well, I know I haven't eaten meat out of a supermarket for probably 6 years unless I'm buying it in a restaurant, because you don't know what you're getting at that point.
And you still don't know what you're getting at the restaurant.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. At a restaurant, that's the only time I've had meat that I didn't know where it came from.
Like we talked yesterday, there's a lot of beef imported from Brazil, Mexico, Canada, just simply because, the United States, they want our meat in these other countries, and then in return they ship this other stuff back that's lesser quality.
Correct.
That's crazy. I've always wondered where the grocery store meat came from. I didn't know that it came from like Brazil sometimes, and it must have a lot of preservatives. And then
it's glue.
Well,
there's the actual glue in
it. Have you heard of the pink slime? You remember that? I quit eating beef for like
they
months.
Import them live and then process them here in the States, but the cattle originated from another country, which is why the big push was to have country of origin stamps on meat in stores, so you know exactly where the stuff's coming from. I guarantee you, if you put two pieces of meat in the store, one says Brazil, one says United States, who's going to buy what?
Yeah, I agree to a certain point. But as a nation, we have a lot of people who are suffering in general, and they are making choices between being able to put gas into their vehicle or purchasing food for their family.
If they're priced the same.
Yeah, if they're priced the same. I mean, that's completely different.
What's helping the market right now is the local guys are competing with these big guys.
Yeah.
And we're keeping the prices in line. So now the little guys can compete.
Love that.
We can compete with these guys.
How are you able to do that?
Because we're cutting off their supply chain.
Oh.
They want to buy your product, but they want it at a discounted price. Well, now we got the market, so it's like.
I mean, personally, I think there should be legislation in place where there is preference given to produce that is produced in this country.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? There should be regulations that help that stuff stay here and be sold here. I mean, that's something that's pretty important.
Yep.
I'll have to talk to the Farm Bureau about that and see if they are attempting to do anything along those lines. But we often talk about energy independence on our show in the United States and how important it is to provide so many life-saving services. Like we mentioned, it's integral in agriculture, healthcare, and obviously our national security. How important, Corey, do you feel that it is to our food supply chain, having that abundant source of fossil fuels here in this country?
I mean, it's huge.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, why are we have more than enough, resources to sustain as the United States and not be needing everybody else.
And that includes our agricultural products.
Our agricultural products. All that's going to do is help the farmers grow.
Mm-hmm.
One of the big problems right now is land. Housing is just crazy. Up around where I live, to buy a good piece of farm ground, you're talking $15,000 an acre. I can't afford to buy 100 acres at $15,000 an acre and run cattle on it. It doesn't pencil out.
How much land do you need per cow?
It depends on where you're at in the States.
And the type of grazing, too.
The type of grazing you're doing.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So you have grass-fed beef, and then you have beef that you feed corn to and other things. So it depends on how much. If they're just grass, they're going to need a heck of a lot more grass than if you're supplementing it with something else.
Got it.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
You summed it up pretty easy.
Mm-hmm. Well, there should be subsidies then for that, too, to help people buy back land.
I agree, but that's not how the government looks at it.
I know. It just seems like we spend our subsidies on things that just really don't need to be spent on, instead of the things that are truly important, that are actually like life-sustaining, not sustaining of something else. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's kind of scary, actually.
Trickle down.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And then I wanted to touch on this because I think this is pretty cool. And I don't think that a lot of people actually realize the impact that mineral rights funding has helped agriculture in PA, West Virginia, and Ohio, I would say. I have the kind of figures from here in Pennsylvania, but I'm sure it's similar across all 3 states. And in PA, approximately 20% of farmers have received mineral right payments, and the average of that is about 154,000. This is just one way that ag communities have been changed because of oil and gas. Have you seen any other changes since we've had this kind of regeneration of oil and gas production and exploration here?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen a lot of farmers that were struggling to get by, pretty much hit the gold mine and be able to.
Are you seeing them stay to farm when they do that, or do you see them selling up? I mean,
A lot of them.
Yeah, that's good.
A lot of them. I mean, there is some I've seen that have cashed in and sold everything, and
Sure.
moved to Florida.
Yeah.
Who knows? But yeah, I mean, it's definitely helped. I mean, a lot of these guys worked their whole lives with nothing, and could barely make the payments on the properties and have big debt and loans, and it's like, when's the bank going to call my note?
Yeah.
When oil and gas came around, it was like free money, sign me up,
Yeah.
Where I live, we're pretty far north. There's not a lot of oil
You have
and
some
gas.
pipelines up that direction. So I know like
Nexus
TC Energy,
Nexus line's real
Nexus
close
came
to
through
where
the
we are.
Rover,
Yep.
came through there.
But everybody there's a lot of leasing going on up around our area originally, when Chesapeake came in.
Sure.
We signed with them, or those leases are pretty expired by now.
Does Encino go as far north as you guys?
So actually, we have an Encino well that they own now. It's directly behind our farm.
Which would have been Chesapeake before, probably.
Yeah, well, it was a
Or
range.
Hillcorp.
It was a range, I think,
Wow.
originally, and then it went to
Wow.
Chesapeake. Yeah, so we're kind of hoping that maybe they'll come back around and release some of
Well-
our property and get that thing back up and running. My brother is actually on part of that lease, and he talks with them once in a while.
Okay.
Talk to Gulfport.
Yeah,
Gulfport don't go that far
Yeah.
north.
they don't want to go.
I mean, there's another operator that is potentially looking at stuff. I'm not going to go into that, but it's pretty hot and heavy. They have done some exploratory drilling up that direction as well a couple of years ago. I actually had to sign like non-disclosure paperwork to bring services onto this. I literally walked on. It's like a normal drilling location. I'm like, so what exactly are we hiding here? Like, it looks just like every other drilling location I've ever seen. And I can't see company man's screen,
Yeah.
right? So I don't know what you're doing here.
We're real oil rich up where we're at, and there's not a lot of gas
Yeah.
pressure to push it out. So
Yeah. I did also want to touch on fertilizer production. And we've touched on this before in some other episodes too. A lot of people don't realize first of all, how much fertilizer we actually use in our farming processes, and it's increasing every year because
crazy synthetic fertilizers just
Natural gas
Crazy.
synthesized fertilizer, if it was eliminated, half of the food in the world would be eliminated.
Yeah.
Well, and now that I'm thinking about it, this ties into probably the lack of land too. So if we're having to farm on smaller parcels of land, we're then having to subsidize or put in more fertilizer to that soil, I would imagine, to produce the same, right?
Yeah, because you keep working that land year and year and year, and
You can't alternate fields and crops like you used to.
you can't. Yeah, I mean, it's generally corn, soybeans, wheat. That's it. And then some guys will put hay in. If they're dairy farmers, the big crop farmers, they're mostly just corn, soybeans, wheat. Corn,
Yeah.
soybeans, wheat. So I mean, you're taking all those nutrients out of the ground every year, and year over year over year, you keep doing that, and synthetic fertilizers the answer to keeping your yields up.
Yeah, and that is ammonia and urea, which are directly, linked to our fossil fuels, to natural gas. Yeah, and I don't think people realize that. So you take away that natural gas production. We've seen increases, obviously, and more imports of ammonia and urea for these processes, which is, what was it, 180% increase in price for fertilizer?
It's nuts.
Yeah, I mean, that's insane to me. And it's not just that. I mean, everything has gone up in price. I know seeds went up in price drastically this year. I actually live on a bird preserve, and we were wanting to put sunflowers in, and the sunflower seeds were like 50 times more than what they were last year.
Literally?
like literally.
Wow.
It was insane. I mean, completely insane. So everything's through the roof as far as agriculture is concerned. And I don't really understand why, except for the knock-on effect from breakdowns of supply chains that we experienced with COVID and everything else. But the more you look into this stuff, it still always leads back to energy. It's crazy. And the kind of bottlenecks that we have in production and the movement of these products, the cost of importing it to supplement what we have under our ground and we're not accessing. And all of that leads to increases in fertilizer prices, which in turn trickle down to the supermarkets, which is why the cost of everything in the supermarkets is what it is right now. I mean, it's like a kind of vicious circle.
Right.
It's
Luckily
crazy.
for us, I mean, we just raise hay for our cattle and then they graze on pasture in the summertime. Our mama cows do, but we don't. I haven't put synthetic fertilizer on my hay fields in years,
Yeah.
just because of the fact that it's super expensive for the reward I get out of it, for what I'm doing. But I also have an abundance of free manure,
Yeah,
so I
absolutely.
use that to its full potential.
Yeah. We actually get it brought out to the preserve as well. So there are some like dairy farms, and as there's like a reciprocity agreement, believe it or not, with the manure to come out to the preserve. So they bring it out there in dump trucks and dump it, and then it gets for free, obviously, and then it gets reused on the preserve. It's free fertilizer for the preserve, and it's a means of disposal for the dairy farmers that have an issue
Right.
of somewhere for all of this poop to go, because it has to go somewhere.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. So that article that you sent, what was it? Anyway, there was an article that Jennifer sent about methane and how to recycle that. And at first, it seemed pretty gross because they had.
It is kind of gross.
They were talking
but
about manure, but enhancing the manure to be able to have a more concentrated methane. But they brought in food waste, like
Yes.
from restaurants in these huge trucks. And the more I read, so towards the end of the article, and we can talk more about it, but towards the end of the article, it said that the smell is actually reduced because you have to cook it, I think. Is that...
there'll be heat processes and breaking it down.
It's all organic. I mean, the organic matter, you put all this stuff together and keep moving it, it's going to heat up. So
I mean, it's
it
the
breaks
same.
itself.
Yeah, it had pictures. I was like...
So when you stack it out at the preserve, even in the dead of winter, you literally have to move it because the heat will build up so high inside that if there are flammable materials next to it, it can actually cause a fire.
Wow.
Because
From manure?
from the breakdown of the stuff inside, you have to move it
All the
around.
organic.
So
Yeah.
we're talking to you about recycling that methane, right? So how do you do that?
I was more asking Corey's
Yeah.
opinion on it as a farmer because I'm really on the fence. It's something they've been toying with for a really, really long time, these processes, and it's still really expensive to do. Adding the food waste has definitely increased the success of these projects. But where I found it really interesting is you have a big player in our industry, Dominion, who is seriously chasing this as like an option for reducing these wastes for large dairy farms, and they're managing to actually do it successfully. And so when I was talking to Corey, I was like, what do you feel about that? Like, as a farmer, do you think that it's viable? Do you think that it, makes sense? And you had mentioned that you feel it's the bigger farms that it really applies
Yeah, the
to.
bigger dairies, I think it definitely pencils out for those guys in the long run. The small guys, it's just way too costly.
Sure.
To do it. We have a few smaller dairies, as far as cost stuff goes, while we're on that subject, around us still, that have actually put in robots to milk the cows.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What?
Oh, now Sarah can't come and milk the cow.
Okay, cow so bad.
Yeah, well, that's the reason they put them in, because they couldn't find labor to do it.
Yeah.
I'll do it for free.
But
That's your new job?
even
You're giving up your career in oil and gas to milk
Quitting
cattle?
Epic to go
Yeah.
milk.
I've done that job. You don't want to do that job, trust me. But
Why?
it's hard work. It's dirty work. Cows kick you all the time.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh yeah.
My,
Could
like,
understand.
it doesn't pay very good.
yeah.
But yeah, they put these robots in, and these things are like $500,000 a piece. I
Wow.
told these guys, I'm like, really? I think I'd just sell the cows. I mean, I know you love them, but by the time
And what size dairy farms are we talking about here? How many
those
head?
robots only do like, I think 60 head a piece
A day?
yeah.
Because how many times do you have to milk them?
They'll go through 3 or 4 times a day.
Okay, that's what I thought.
They actually gain production on the robots when they do those versus a timed milking. Because
Yeah.
the thing has a reader on it. The cow has a computer chip. It'll come through. If it's been through in X amount of hours, it won't milk it until it's hit that threshold where it needs milked again. So they do gain some efficiency.
So you're meaning to tell me these cows have microchips like our flowback pipe does so that we can track exactly how many times they've gone through? Is that what you're trying to tell me
That's
here?
what I'm telling you.
How do these robots work? Are the milkers always on the udders?
No, the cow, so basically they come through the end of the barn and they have to go through the robot to get to the other side of the barn where they want to go to the feed, water, etc. So they go in there and it's basically like a chute, and then the milking system comes down and hooks onto them, and then we'll milk them.
So you don't have to do anything.
No, I mean, you got to train them there for the first couple weeks.
You train the cows?
Yeah, they train them, and then some of them don't get it. And they
Now,
just
I
have
do
to-
have visions of like these cows being trained. Like,
Yeah,
I'm not exactly sure how you would go about doing that.
it's
Kind of
interesting.
funny. Yeah.
Reward them with grass.
Oh, I imagine they
dog
would
treats.
be food
Oh, yeah.
oriented, food, whatever
Livestock.
you call it. Yeah.
Very food.
Driven,
Driven,
food
yeah,
driven, right?
for
So
sure.
that's what you're going to do. I don't
Yeah,
think grass is going to do it for them, though.
but-
It's going to have to be something good.
But the cost of these things is it's crazy. By the time they're paid for, they're going to be wore out,
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah, that is kind of crazy.
silly.
So, but I do think the methane recovery is a really cool kind of concept. And it is a relatively small amount of methane that it's capturing. But the more of these kind of processes that we can develop where we are reusing something that's a byproduct of an absolutely necessary
Industry.
right? And it all goes towards our eventual goal, because both people that work in agriculture as well as people that work in oil and gas are constantly trying to improve these processes
Sure.
so that we are reducing our carbon footprint and the greenhouse gases and everything else. I mean, it's been since 1995 we've decreased every single year, and that's not happening on accident, right? That's an actual concerted effort. And it's not something that's just happening over the last 3 years where ESG became the cool word for everybody to do. This is a consolidated effort between agriculture, the oil and gas sector, as well as many other people in actually attempting to be better stewards of the environment and make these practices better.
Right.
So, yeah, it's not something that's happening magically overnight. And then we could, go down the rabbit hole of all of the other things that are happening in other places that are completely negating all of the good work that we're doing here, but we're not going to do that. I really do want to stay on a positive note and really highlight the fact that, I truly believe, they're integral to each other, agriculture and energy. One can't exist without the other, quite frankly. And without them, we simply wouldn't have any of the society that we have right now. I mean, it's
People like having heat in their house.
correct.
They like having hamburgers and steaks and
Correct. And they like having a grill to cook them on.
Clean water
clean water,
from the irrigation.
ice cream.
Yeah. All of that kind of stuff, which every 4th of July, we actually make our ice cream by bypassing the belt on a tractor. And we use that to churn the ice cream and make our ice cream by an old John Deere tractor. So we wouldn't be able to do that either without natural gas or without gas or diesel, rather. So maybe a little bit.
In a good way. I like it.
We could survive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
could. That's why I'm friends with you guys.
Yeah, you need us for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
We all need you guys.
So, last but not least, how can we find this store of yours when it opens? Like, are you guys going to have a website? Are you on Facebook? Where can we find us?
So we're on Facebook.
Okay.
The farm is in Marble Country Meats,
And the name of the farm again?
Reiter Farms.
Okay. So it's Reiter Farms. And when I looked at it, there were several. So this is the actual beef farm, because I think there's a couple of dairy farms with a similar name out that
Could be.
direction too. Yeah.
It's Reiter Farms LLC. We're in Alliance, Ohio.
Perfect.
Marble Country Meats.
And when do you think that store is actually going to be open?
So we're targeting the first part of August. we're just kind of waiting on the animals to get ready
Yeah.
and get the freezers filled up.
Well, you were saying you're having to book your appointments at the butcher a year in advance.
Yeah, so I have stuff booked out through, into next year already.
That's just crazy to me.
What?
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
why Penn State has the meat cutting?
Correct.
Well, that's part of the reason, when COVID happened, this huge demand for meat came about. So everybody started wanting to influx the butcher shops, and they booked up, because nobody knew how long the pandemic was going to last. So they wanted to make sure that they had a steady supply. So they booked these butcher shops up, for a year, maybe 2. And now you have to call at the first of the year, in most cases, and tell them your whole book of appointments for that following year. And it's crazy. And some places are even charging you a hold fee on your spot, like a $50 hold on your fee. And if you cancel it, they keep the money.
Oh, geez. Well, I can kind of see their point too, right?
They got burned on a lot of stuff. People
Yeah.
said they're going to bring animals in. They never did. It's like, well, what the heck?
Yeah.
We're holding the spot for you. Somebody else could have used it.
Yeah. I think I booked mine in November for April for me to have mine butchered. So, yeah, that's far out.
We're pretty fortunate. The people we use work with us really well. And, if I need to get something in a pinch.
That's only because you do landowner negotiations and liaison. And so they all know you and they like you because you've been nice to them.
I like to talk to people. So I'll talk about
Absolutely.
anything, especially when it comes to agriculture, cows, heavy equipment, oil and gas.
And it all goes together.
It all goes together. Yeah, it's fun.
Well,
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, you've chosen like 2 of the most labor-intensive industries to work in at one time. So I think you're even crazier probably than me. And I work all of the time. So that's saying something.
Yeah, I tell everybody I go home and work, and they're like, "You work at home too?" Like doing all this hard work. I said, "Yeah, but that's a stress reliever for me at home."
Yeah. I could see that too. I felt the same way about my animals. I'd be out there at 3:00 in the morning feeding them, and she'd be like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "The goats have to eat." Or I'd leave an event. I'd be like, "I have to go home and milk the goats." People are like, "You're doing what?" Sorry, I have to go.
But I've been through the whole process. I've been at the bottom. I've been a laborer. I've been a heavy equipment operator. I've been in management. I've been through everything and seen it all from everybody's eyes. So I know what it's like to be on the other side of things, and I try to make things easy for everybody.
Yeah,
I'm sure
absolutely.
people respect you because you've worked your way up.
Yeah, I didn't get anywhere by, because I knew somebody. I got to where I'm at because I worked my butt off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if anything breaks down on pad, they come to you, don't they? Because he was like, I've been doing this since I was 3 months old.
No, I let the facilities guys do that stuff. But when it comes to moving dirt, I'm out there quite a bit, and I like to be in the field when we're doing that stuff. And if I could get in the equipment and help the guys, I probably would. But I'm not really well.
I will tell you, some of the best pipeline hands that we have ever had have come from agriculture because all of our equipment is either Cat or John Deere.
Yeah.
So when it goes down, they know how to run it, but they also know how to fix it.
Right.
So if you're in the middle of nowhere, you're going straight to your ag guys to fix your equipment because they can figure it out.
The last thing a young farm kid wanted to do when they broke the tractor was call Dad and
Yeah.
tell him that I broke the tractor and you need to come out here and fix it.
What would Dad do?
Well, it just depends on what Dad was doing when you called him, but you learn how to just make things happen.
Yeah. Well, they are definitely by far our best hands, I would say, for sure. Hardworking.
They're hardworking, and I'll tell you what, they're probably some of the safest working individuals too, because working on a farm is really dangerous. A lot of things can happen, around the equipment and stuff. So
You have like a healthy respect because you think about it.
And I don't, but I've had 2 close families lose family members just in the last 6 months in farming accidents. I mean, it happens all of the time. And I don't think people realize what a dangerous job it is.
Yeah, did you know more people get killed a year by cows than sharks?
Did not?
From like driving into cows?
No, from the cows attacking you.
Cows?
Yeah.
What?
Believe it or not, they're not all big puppy dogs.
Oh.
And they're heavy.
And they're heavy.
They're really heavy. Yeah. So anyhow,
I'm gonna cuddle a cow.
Yeah, we'll see about that, Sarah. You might not be here next week if you
I want to
cuddle the
milk
cow.
a cow.
Well, we'll get you
I'm
there.
coming. I don't know where your farm is, but I'm coming.
He doesn't have milk cows.
Oh, dang it.
You'll have to go to the farm with the robots and kick the robot off.
Introduce me to one of your landowners. Yes, dairy cow.
I don't think we have any really landowners in our areas that we have oil and gas stuff that are dairy,
If
Dairy
any of
is
you guys have a
really
milking cow, let
decreasing
me
as far
know.
as small farms.
especially down in this area.
Yeah.
It's just there's not enough land to do
Yep.
a decent sized dairy to sustain it.
Mm-hmm. Which again, is terrifying. We talked about this on the phone because as this stuff gets consolidated and the smaller farms disappear, it means that everything is owned by less people.
Right.
And they completely control that supply, which is terrifying to me. And that's why I think it's super important to really encourage to buy local and support all of your local, people in agriculture in any way, shape, or form to keep that going, because the reality is it's going to be in two people's hands and they're going to control it all.
Yeah, and I think just supporting any local business in general is the way to go.
I agree.
I try to keep all my money as local as possible.
Mm-hmm. And listen, oil and gas has been great at that too. If we talk about 4-H programs and supporting our county fairs and things like that, they've always been huge proponents of supporting those programs and buying local.
Yeah, I mean, when people come in and buy our products, I turn around and spend that money locally.
Yeah.
Buying stuff. So
it's really important. Really, really important.
Mm-hmm.
So anyhow, just quickly to recap before we have to say goodbye to Corey. I hope that this has raised some awareness of the synergies between agriculture and energy. I mean, they truly are the building blocks of everything that we have. And I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your story.
This was really informative.
I'm on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If, in the future, if we ever want to revisit some other topics or come back
Absolutely. We'd love to have you.
The store and how things are going.
Oh, we'd love to. Maybe we'll come out to the store.
Okay.
Because then we can see the cows. You cannot milk them. You can buy some beef and try it. Okay.
Or if you don't want to do that, I'll bring you a care package.
There you go. Ooh.
That'd be cool. I've never had like a non-store bought steak.
Oh, you gotta
ever.
Expand your horizons a little bit.
100%.
Totally down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How thick do you like your steaks?
I like them thick.
I love this girl.
How do you like it cooked?
Medium rare.
Okay.
Did I pass?
You passed.
I passed the test, but I like it smothered in A1.
Oh. So
But I get store-bought steak.
You
That's
do
the
not
problem.
need it if you're getting it from somewhere local. And it's cut well. You do not need it. I'm telling you that right now. Salt and pepper.
It'll melt in your mouth.
Yes. Like butter. So, well, Corey, thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
And again, this has been another episode of Energy First with Sarah and Jen. I am Jen.
I am Sarah.
And we'll see you next time.